don't. I don't think our police departments or law officers or enforcers are the biggest threat. We cannot defund the police departments, law enforcement agencies, because then you're going to have riots like we haven't seen. We have to keep our law enforcement officers safe. They, and this will probably go into your next question, okay, but they are no different than the people in the military. They get PTSD just like the military does. So why not have them go through and do a psych review every year or every 2 years? They see things that me and you don't want to see. I mean, their lives, when they get home at night, they're living these dreams all night long. Then when they go to work tomorrow, they may get stressed out. And then you might have an issue with one of the law enforcement officers. But if they were tested to make sure that they were still fit, if they needed the help, give them the help. That is how, and I'm kind of biased here because a lot of my family too was law enforcement, and most of them are passed away by now. A couple of them were shot, but I know they got stressed out. I've got several friends that are in law enforcement, and you can see it in their eyes some days that, why am I here? So if they were given the opportunity to speak with somebody, not in the department, somebody out of the blue, you can talk to people that you know left and right and have a good conversation with them, but you're not going to get to them. So if you have somebody they don't know talk to them, they're more likely to open up.
Of course not. Look, my dad was the chief of police in El Dorado, Kansas for 25 years. My dad taught us right from wrong. He taught me the importance of law and order. One of his favorite sayings is that two wrongs do not make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right, that a crime of retaliation is wrong. And look, no matter what the situation, no one has the right to go out and loot, to steal, to vandalize, to hurt other people's persons or their property. So look, I believe in the police. If anything, we need to give them more funding. You know, people expected so much out of the police officers. I remember my dad, you know, he had to be an expert marksman, a traffic cop, a detective, but he also had to be a social worker, a psychologist, a marital counselor as well. And now today's police deal so much with the homeless, the mentally ill, those types of things as well. So look, we need to give the police more funding and more support, not less.
Absolutely not. I do not support defunding the police. I think we ought to fund the police to the degree where we have proper training, where some of the things that happen in Minnesota aren't occurring. That is a travesty, and it ought to be condemned universally, what happened there. I do not think we should defund the police. I think we ought to be very strict. People can protest in this country, and peaceful protests are something that I would support 100%. But some of the rioting and the looting and and some of the murdering that's going on, the taking of life and brandishing of firearms, I think that our leaders need to put their foot down and say, we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to fix whatever the root problem is. We're going to address that problem. We're not going to sweep it under the rug or look the other way. Let's fix those problems, any problem that we might have. But I don't believe I don't believe we should be defunding or even discussing defunding the police.
I absolutely do not support defunding the police. It's anathema to a civil society. Our laws, while there are too many of them, are there to protect us. They're there to keep things in order, and that's everything we haven't seen for the last has it been 2 months yet? Not quite 2 months, a month and a half really of this, what some people have called riot season. And it's really, it's unfortunate. I do believe it is a continued, it's like they took off, the media, all the bad actors in this COVID hysteria took off time to have riot season. And, I could talk about that for hours. But anyway, the point is, no, we should not defund the police and move it to other programs that aren't effective either. You know, we need to elect better representatives to be our mayors, and hopefully they will get to the bottom of, you know, that's their job, is to watch over the police departments and represent the people against the law, you know, with law enforcement. Sorry, I had a fly in here. But you know, to the elected representatives, especially mayors, that's their job, is to protect the people of their city and to look out for their best interests. And clearly the mayors in all the cities that have had riots, looting, that have gone unchecked, you know, they were Democrat mayors. And that's what we've seen. And the cities that were the most top-down controlled by Democrats, Minneapolis, not one Republican in a key office. Seattle, not one Republican in a key office. So, you know, the American people need to decide which side they're on. And if they're going to be further to the right, then they, you know, even if they see themselves as a centrist, they better vote Republican. Otherwise, they're going to get the opposite. Because if you don't vote, you're voting for the worst option. And if you vote for a Democrat, I also believe you're voting for the worst option.
As I understand it, and that's because it doesn't do. My father was a police officer for over 35 years and ran the training academy, and he was specifically like trying to teach de-escalation tactics and other sorts of things. But at the end of the day, the thing isn't just about bad apples or anything. It's about how we approach problems as a society. Because we have a poor part of town, we don't know how to deal with it, so let's make everything they're doing illegal and then enforce that through the law. And some of the things we know is it's really expensive. It is really, really expensive. It doesn't address the root problems. It's not like it suddenly makes those areas devoid of crime to have police everywhere. And so there are more effective and cost-effective solutions that already exist to so many of these things. Thinking about like how we deal with homelessness, how we deal with addiction, how we deal with economic depression, how we deal with children and youth who are exhibiting antisocial behaviors. Here in Kansas, we actually already had a pilot program that was there for a few years that instead of like, oh, there's something wrong, I'm gonna lock you up, which kids need love, they need care. If they're acting in antisocial ways, that typically means there's something going on at home, there's some trauma, and so instead of like taking them away from positive support in a violent authoritarian environment where they're almost just as likely to commit crime when they leave as when they came here, sometimes more. And so when instead they had, well, let's send social workers into their home, 4 to 6 families per social worker, work with them doing counseling with their families, work with them in school. And what happened at the end is they had a significant drop in recidivism rate. It cost way less, but then some politician at the end of it, they were like, well, we want to do this tough on crime thing. And so they closed that and built a new juvie center, which is so expensive. And then we have, for the rest of their life, a higher likelihood that they will continue to be in crime, continue to not be participating in the economy. That affects us so much. And so we really need to use the things the solutions we already have that are more cost effective and more effective for building the type of society we want.
First of all, I think we need to train. We need to spend whatever we need to do to train people to understand, listen, everybody out there is not a bad person either, that if you see some kind of some things happening, don't think the worst. Let's think the best, but also be aware that you need to protect yourself and the other citizens involved. One of the things that I think that we can do a much better job of is communicating between departments, having a communication system that, and with technology today, there's no reason why we can't do that. The left hand should be talking to the right hand. So different departments ought to be communicating about what's going on in their community. So that would be one thing right away that I think that we can do to improve our policing. Being a law enforcement officer, it's almost like the military. It's a very stressful and can be, you know, you and I go to work. The last thing that you and I think about is whether or not we're going to come home today. We just expect that that's going to happen. But if you're in the military, you're in the law enforcement, especially today, if you have a family member that's going to work, and you give them a hug or a kiss or shake their hand, you understand that that may be the last time you see them alive. And so when I talk about training, I think we need to make it so that police are not felt as they're always trying to get you type thing. We need them to be supportive. For example, if I have an emergency at my house where someone slips and falls, I want to be able to call the police and have them come and be as helpful there as I need them to be. The same should apply for things that are going on in everyday life. I don't think. Again, I want to go back to some of the negative things that have happened. There are bad people everywhere, but they are. I do not think that's the norm. And again, when we have incidents like what happened in Minnesota, that should be universally condemned. I don't know that anyone felt supportive of those officers and what they did to Mr. Floyd. That was incomprehensible. It was just beyond.
I have some friends that are involved in local law enforcement, and the ones I have, you know, that are friends of mine happen to be Republicans. So that they're trying to do things. They're reaching out to communities. I have a friend named Stephen Martinez Dillon, and he is a police officer in Wichita, and they're doing a tremendous amount of community outreach within you know, Black and Latino communities. And Stephen is, you know, he's half Caucasian, half Mexican, and you know, he speaks Spanish, so he's doing good work. Well, there's it's just like anything else. 90% of the cops, 90% of the priests, 90%, you know, it's probably higher than that, all do great work. You know, it's always the bad apples that spoil the bunch, and we need to do a better job of, like I said, it comes to the elected representatives who can make those decisions to reform it. It's not just about the policies; it's about the people and having the integrity, the goodwill, the good sense, the character to make the right decisions for the people. And that just hasn't been happening.
Well, look, I think that many law enforcement agencies are already doing the things that's being talked about on the national level. I've sat down and had discussions with the statewide, the Chiefs of Police Association, the sheriff's officers. And by the way, my dad was the former president of that Chiefs of a Police Association. And already they're doing so many more things. They're holding officers accountable. They're reviewing all of their actions whenever there's any type of lethal force, that they're already being reviewed. So we need to make those processes more transparent, and that if there are issues with that police officer, that those issues need to follow them when they're going from job to job. So go back to my experience as a physician. When a doctor tries to apply for privileges at a new hospital, that part of that process is the new hospital gets to review all the malpractice claims on that particular physician. And then they can make a decision, does that impact that we're going to let this doctor do surgeries in this hospital or not? So I think much the same. We need to make that process more transparent. Our policemen officers need more training, not less training. They need more monies, not less monies. At the same thing, we can never take away their qualified immunity, which protects them so they can make those split-second life-saving decisions. So that is a sword that I will absolutely die on and protect. But there are always opportunity for any organization to get better. And across the state, I see the local police forces and sheriff's officers doing so many of these things already, trying to raise the bar, trying to raise the standards for their profession.
The activism here in Kansas City, Kansas has revolved around, unfortunately, some very specific, for one, we want a conviction integrity unit funded, because currently we've had multiple falsely accused people of murder. Lamont McIntyre was freed after a significant period, and currently we're trying to get John Keith Calvin freed. And what we see is, one, there should be independent investigations of police misconduct. You don't want the police investigating the police. Even if you want to do the right thing in that environment, it can be very difficult. And so have an independent reporting line, because we all can understand, like, if someone who we expect to help us doesn't, and we have no means of reporting that without feeling unsafe, like, that is a scary place to be. Like, of course, we should have an independent system to, like, review those. And then we had some very racist, violent, exploitative police who are never held accountable in Kansas City, Kansas. And it's just been cover up after cover up. And so what we need is to also, like, air the grievances that have been accumulating for so long here. And instead it's just been like, shut up, move on, we're good now, believe us, trust us. And it's like, how can you trust someone who these things keep happening, but they just tell you to shut up whenever, like, if we're going to rebuild trust, like, we have to have transparency about what's happened, and we need to address it instead of trying to cover it up and move forward. And so, yeah, there are different things that provide accountability and transparency. Not having the ability to put your neck on or your knee on someone's neck unless you are intending and legally able to use lethal force.
Well, like I was just stating, I would like to see the officers have to go through some type of psych eval. Okay. Not to say that they're crazy, but to get them the help they need if they need to help. I'm not saying every officer out there is bad. There are some bad ones. There's a lot of good ones that will save your life and save my life and save everybody else's. We have to get them the help that they need, if they need it. And the officer with George, that wasn't right. He should have been taken off of the force, put behind a desk. If that's what the captain wanted, if they wanted to keep him there so he could retire, put him in the office. Don't let him out in the field. You can't do that with people. If they have a mental issue, but the only way you're going to find out if they have a mental issue is if you do a psych exam. If they speak to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, whatever, okay, and an independent one. Because if you use one from that department, they may like the guy. They say, okay, you're good, let's go. Then the next day he goes out there and does something horrific. We can't have that. And that's where I stand on that.